So tonight, this Shabbat, and this week, we have been inside of a Torah portion that's right at the beginning of the book of Exodus, the book of Shmot, names. We started that book last week, and so much happened so fast. That is one of the things that people realize when you read Torah. It's like, wow, the whole Passover story, it happened in a few paragraphs. Yes, it goes fast. So a whole bunch happened last week, and now we're in this place where Moses already has grown up. He had to leave. He grew up in an open adoption between the house of Pharaoh and the house of his birth family because there was the decree that all Hebrew babies should be killed. And he has had the incident when he was grown up with the taskmaster that he killed, and he had to leave, and he was at the burning bush, and he was told to go and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And during that exchange, he made clear that he did not think that was a good idea, that he didn't think it was him who should be doing it. I'm not sure who else could have possibly been the absolutely perfect person for this job other than him. But according to him, it was definitely not him. And the reason he kept saying over and over again is because he said, well, he came up with a lot of reasons, but the main one was that he didn't speak well, that he was afraid people would not listen to him, ki kabed pe, because I have this heavy mouth and this kabed lashon, this heavy tongue. And God said, yes, it is you. I am the creator of all things. I give speech. You're going to be okay, back and forth, until Aaron, God says that you won't go alone. Your brother Aaron will go with you, yes, and will speak. So Moses reluctantly goes, and he goes to Pharaoh, and he says, let my people go. And Pharaoh says no, which is exactly what he thought would happen. And after that first ask, Pharaoh has now made it much harder on the people. So not only is Pharaoh not listening to him, but the people are like, why? We didn't ask you to do this. Now our work is harder. So Pharaoh's not interested. The people are not interested. And he was like, I said this would happen. Let me go back to my sheep. But that's not what's happening. He goes back to God and he says again, this is all about my speech impediment. And this time he says, it's because I have lips, shaftaim, that are aral, that are uncircumcised. So I'm not able to speak well. There is something wrong with my mouth, with my lips, he keeps saying. And so again, God says it's going to be okay. And again, once Moses points to his physical vulnerability, God supports him with saying, you will not do this alone. And it's repeated again that Aaron is going to go with you. And Aaron does. And then, when this comes up in this other round, God tells Moses something very specific. You should go to see the Pharaoh in the morning. Go see Pharaoh in the morning. So, of course, when there's a moment like that, our tradition is like, what? Why the morning? Why the morning when Pharaoh is going to the edge of the Nile? Why should I do that in the morning? So, our midrash step in here, and they say, in the morning, Pharaoh goes to relieve himself in the Nile. And he does it secretly. He doesn't want anybody to see that he's human, because he's trying to say that he's a god and not a human being who has openings and closings that need to be used, his physicality. He's trying to say, I am like a god. So he pees in the river to say, I am not vulnerable, I'm invulnerable. So here in Midrash Tanhuma Vayera, there's something drawn from another book, from Ezekiel, that talks about how Pharaoh says, everything belongs to me. All things are from me. That I am like a God, and he has no need for other human beings, and he needs to hide his physicality, his vulnerability, by peeing in the river. So Moses says, I have a body, and my body doesn't always work. I'm honest and I'm vulnerable about what I struggle with, and I need help. From God, from my brother, from other people. And Pharaoh is denying his physicality, his vulnerability, and it's an arrogance that says, I don't need anyone or anything. And that also repeats as a refrain in their listening or their not listening. Moses struggles with communication and being heard. Pharaoh's not really interested in listening. The scholar Aviva Zornberg writes, in descriptions of Pharaoh, the Midrash, she loves the Midrash, often quotes this verse from Ezekiel that I had mentioned, that Pharaoh, king of Egypt, mighty monster, sprawling in all its channels, who said, my river is my own. I made it for myself. And Rashi's comment is that Pharaoh feels no need of life sources beyond himself. He doesn't need to look for rain or any of the sustenance beyond himself. Pharaoh conceives of himself as generating his own greatness. And in Midrashic literature, Pharaoh becomes this prototype of arrogance. But the point here that is so clear in the physicality is the vulnerability that lies at the heart of the arrogance. To deny mortality means, in terms of an inner body image, to close the body, its exits, its entrances, and to become non-porous. This includes not letting what's happening around come in and out, shutting down, not listening, not seeing, not taking it in through our porous bodies. This is a philosophy of not hearing as it is from our whole bodies, in which Michael Walzer says it represses instinct and moral value at the same time. A philosophy of not hearing. Hearing meaning not just our ears, but in all of the ways that we hear. You don't need to hear, so you don't need to respond. And we know that that's not our framework as a people. We know that at Sinai, which is coming soon, we heard and then we were obligated. We know now, and we can't look away. We hear, we are responsible. We are beholden. That is why I think on the physical sides of ourselves that want to look away, literally look away from things we don't want to see, because we know when they enter us that we have responsibility. It is frightening and shocking to have leadership now in our government who's fitting this model of not listening and projecting invulnerability. I am like a god. Arrogance. What I am now calling peeing in the river leadership. You can join me, just coining that term. So on January 8th, there was this article after the New York Times sat with our president for hours. He declared on Wednesday evening that his power as commander-in-chief is constrained only by his own morality. Brushing aside international law and other checks on his ability to use military might. And when he was asked, he said, "Are there any limits on your global power?" He said, "Yeah, there's one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop me. I do not need international law." I mean, at least it's transparent. It's pretty clear. It's peeing in the river leadership. I am like a god. And we see it in so many ways. This was about foreign policy, but it's also here, as we know, inside of what's happening in the country. So many ways. Being out of the United States for a couple weeks this winter and hearing what this kind of leadership is making people think around the world. understandable, but also so upsetting. I heard from a Canadian recently about this library in Canada, which I didn't know about this. There's a library that crosses both Canada and the United States, so there's like an entrance that people, literally to get into the building of the library, they need to walk around to get inside. And for more than a century, this has just been a thing. There's just, you walk around to get into the door of the library because it's on both sides. It's in Vermont, it's the Haskell Free Library and Opera House. And inside there's a line of black tape on the library's floor that shows this is US and this is Canada, and you move across it. And anyone who lives within a 30-mile radius can get eligible for a library card, doesn't matter, Canada or the United States. Well, January 30th last year, Christine Noem visited the library, and she said, in front of the library, USA #1, and then stepped into the Canada side and said, the 51st state. And now, now anyone in Canada cannot go into the library. You have to go through customs or whatever. It's a small story, but it does feel like a pretty big symbol of what it means to say we don't need anybody else, and our leadership is without any vulnerability. So in these moments, we can learn from our ancient people, because our people clearly, with Pharaoh, have dealt with this before. And so of our wisdom traditions, they have things to instruct us in these times. I remember during COVID, I got calls from several people. I was like, yeah, you're onto something. They were like, hey, I'm not Jewish, but I asked my friends if they have a rabbi because I figured I should talk to a rabbi because you guys have gone through plagues. I mean, you guys have gone through everything. And I was like, that's right. We've gone through plagues, and we've gone through tyrants, and we've gone through everything. And this is a moment to dig deep into our ancient wisdom. It might be in a different context, but it's speaking to us with the kind of learning and truth that we can draw from. So here we have Moses, grounded in his body and his vulnerability. He reminds us that we are humans, that we have bodies, that we need other people, that we need help, and that it's together that we make leadership. So how do we stay connected to our bodies and our vulnerabilities in these times and not shut down and not look away, especially when it feels like there's so much all the time? Thank God we have Sabbath. Our bodies need us to respond, to do what we're able to do and skilled at doing. Part of the ways that it helps us is to not stay stuck, to know that we can move with what is happening. That's part of what taking action and making art and writing songs, that's what it does. It helps us to move with our bodies through the reality of what is happening. And literally connecting to our openings and our closings and our hollow spaces throughout our bodies, especially in these times. Our physicality, our health. And with an onslaught or an overwhelm, when you're hearing something for the first time, there's also been a tremendous amount of personal grief in this community right now. I'm hearing you tell me so many people in your lives who are dying. To not just shut down, but to take a moment with your body and say, I have just heard this. I am taking a moment to not pretend that I don't have a mouth and a heart and ears and guts and all the things that make up my body, and I'm going to connect for a moment. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to run around the block. I'm going to jump up and down a lot this week at Shabbat. Whatever it is that your body is calling out to do, these are times to tend to that. Our sages say that the workings of our bodies have to do with these openings and closings and hollow places functioning well. And if you think about it, it's pretty close to, it's almost completely there, right? Something's too open, something's too closed, right? And that's all inside of our innards and our organs and all of our body. So they're so connected to that, how important that is, that there is a blessing that we say when we use the bathroom. a blessing when we use the bathroom. So not only are we not hiding by peeing in a river, but we literally call out our physicality when we use the bathroom. And we say this blessing. It's called the Asher Yatzar blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher Yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, uvara bo nikavim nikavim, halolim halolim. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed a human with wisdom and created with him many openings and many hollow spaces. Here is a blessing for our bodies, and chokhmah is wisdom. So here our bodies are tied to wisdom in a prayer that we can say every time we use the bathroom, if you would like to. Tied to wisdom, tied to vulnerability, tied to a leadership that is shared. All of that from our bodies. And as a reminder, Moses, who was really clear that it wasn't him and that it wasn't working and that he had these parts that weren't enough, not good enough, he didn't just sit there, friends. He expressed his vulnerability. He asked for help. He did it together. And then he freaking led us out of Egypt, okay? So it's not like a kind of thing that says, I can't do anything. I just have to sit here thinking about my mouth. That is not what we're saying. And I do want to raise that up because I do think for some people there is an immobilization that can happen inside of what's known as wellness culture. So I'm making a distinction between that and listening to the wisdom of our bodies, to stay connected, to literally wisdom, to chokhmah, and to our leadership, so that it supports us in our moving, in our making, in our taking action. So I want to share with you the very end of this blessing to close. The last line of this blessing ends, and it's our blessing for tonight. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei kol basar, mafli la'asot. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh and acts wondrously. Amen.